as I said, thank you all for having me here today, and it's delighted to talk to you about nutrition. Well, we have about an hour today, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to discuss nutrition and pulmonary fibrosis, but we've lots of time for questions as well, so please feel free to put any specific questions you have into the chat. I'm happy to address these during the talk, or we can address them at the end of the talk, whatever you prefer. And just one thing I want to highlight from today is that the talk I'm giving today is very much in terms of general nutrition advice. So if anyone has, for example, diabetes or kidney disease, they may have more individualized nutrition care plans. So this is for the general group. So again, link with your own dietitians if you are seeing someone, if you have any queries on that. But let's get started. So today, I'm hoping to look at pulmonary fibrosis symptoms that impact nutrition. We're going to look at body composition, looking at maintaining and building muscle mass. We're going to look at what is a balanced, healthy diet. And then I'm going to give some advice for weight gain and for weight loss. And then strategies to manage the impact of pulmonary fibrosis on your diet, and then strategies to look at the side effects of some of the medications. And then again, we're going to look at strategies to manage reflux. So it is a lot of information. The slides will be circulated. If there's anything that we don't touch on today, please put in the question box and I can address and at a later stage as well. So please do just ask questions. So first of all, we're going to look at the pulmonary fibrosis and the impact on nutrition. And as all of you are very much aware, and as has featured in many ILFA surveys over the years, that the symptoms of pulmonary fibrosis can really impact your diet, which then impacts your nutrition status. So for example, if we just look at the increased shortness of breath, that can really affect your appetite. It can affect your physical activity. That effort of breathing, and yourselves when you have a coughing fit, the amount of energy that you expend when you are coughing like that, again, is all going to affect how much energy you need each day. So again, you're going to need more calories than maybe the person beside you as a result of that. And all of these symptoms then can also affect your appetite. So with the increased shortness of breath, that can affect your appetite. If your mood is affected at all, that affects your appetite. If you're tired, that affects your appetite. And then that can lead sometimes to an unbalanced diet because we're eating the foods that are easiest to eat. I know sometimes people say to me things like red meat, they might find it quite difficult in terms of chewing and coordinating breath, so they're eating less red meat. So again, their iron intake is lower. So again, it could affect, the balance in your diet. And then all of this can affect your total body mass. So if you're eating less, you're burning more calories, your body starts to use its own stores. So we start losing weight, we start losing muscle mass. And again, that can just be a vicious cycle in terms of then we have more fatigue and we're doing less physical activity. So really there can be a significant impact on your nutrition status and then also on your body composition. Now, I'm conscious today that I'm going to use the term body composition. And when we all think of body composition, I suppose oftentimes we think of our BMI, or body mass index. And just for anyone maybe who's not sure what BMI is your weight divided by your height. And again, it's categorized into underweight, normal weight, overweight, and the 3 different classes of obesity. And just to give you an example, if we were working out someone's BMI, say for example, you are 80 kilos, you are 5'7" or 1.7 meters, your BMI would work out at 27.7, meaning that you are in the overweight category. But what I want to remind everyone is body composition is so much more than just BMI. And oftentimes here, in the lung transplant team, we will look at muscle mass. That's what we're interested in, is someone maintaining their muscle mass. Because muscle enables us to be active. And if we lose our muscle mass, or there is a decrease in our muscle mass, we become less mobile and we become more frail. So really, it's not, BMI is not the be all and end all. It's really your body composition, your muscle mass, your strength. That's what we're focusing on. And I always use this illustration because I think it's quite interesting. But if we look at these 2 gentlemen here, they both have the same BMI. So a BMI of 35, meaning that they're in the obese class 2 category. But if we look at the gentleman on the left, he certainly has a very high muscle mass, whereas the gentleman on the right would appear to have a lower muscle mass and is holding a lot of his weight around his abdomen. And we know that if we hold a lot of weight around our abdomen, we increase our risks of type 2 diabetes, of heart disease, of high blood pressure. So really, BMI here is not reflective of the gentleman on the left, but is reflective of the gentleman on the right. And I know this slide here can seem a little bit busy, and just to give you a little bit of background, these are images of someone who have had a CT, and they're showing us the individual's body muscle mass, and it's showing their fat mass as well as others. But if we take the illustration on the left, what we're looking at here is three people with different three men with different BMIs, but we can see their muscle mass is the same for all of them. And if we look at the image on the right, we can see here again, both individuals will have the same BMIs, but they have different muscle mass. So the point I'm trying to get across here is that you could be obese, but you have suboptimal amounts of muscle mass. So really, if someone is looking at another individual and they're thinking, oh, they couldn't be malnourished, their BMI is 30, that person can be malnourished. That person can be sarcopenic. They can have lost muscle mass. And the focus there should not be on losing weight. It should be on building muscle mass to help them be fitter and stronger. And I suppose that's the point I'm just trying to get across here, because sometimes we put too much emphasis on BMI, and really we want to look at the integrity of someone's body, their muscle mass, their strength. And I know, again, you touch on this quite a lot, with the physios here in ILFA as well. But I suppose when we're trying to build muscle mass or maintain muscle mass, maintain our function, what's so important is that we exercise, and then that we take the right nutrition to help feed our muscles so that we can build them or maintain them. So really, it does go hand in hand. The exercise alone is not enough, or eating the right foods without exercise is not enough. So we need the combination of both. And I suppose that's why, in terms of the first food I'm going to talk about today, it's protein, because protein is what we need to maintain and build our muscle mass. So when we eat a protein, it's broken down in our bodies into amino acids, and then these amino acids are used to, help to build and repair muscle, for bone health, for skin health, for hair. We need amino acids for our hormones, our enzymes. It's so important that we take adequate amounts of protein. And if we just look at this image here, where do we get protein from? Well, yes, we can get them from meat, chicken, fish, eggs, beans, lentils, nuts, and dairy products. All are excellent sources of protein. But I just want to remind everyone again here that, everyone is different in terms, again, if you have certain conditions, you may have an individualized nutrition plan in terms of the amount of protein that you do need. But in general, we would say for the general population, we would probably need 2 to 3 portions of protein per day. If you are someone who's trying to build some muscle mass, or again, you found that you have lost some muscle mass and you're trying to maintain the level that you have, I would be suggesting 3 portions of protein per day. So what exactly is a portion of protein? So in terms of, the red meats here in the poultries, we're talking about the palm of our hand, really, which may be about 75 grams of protein. Or more. If again you're looking at fish, it might be 100 grams. If we're talking about a portion in terms of eggs, it would be 2 eggs. In terms of nuts or seeds, it would be 40 grams. So just a ballpark. I'm not expecting everyone to weigh their food or anything, but just to give you an idea, if you were wondering how much protein you are taking. And just as a guide, say if we took a person who's 70 kilos, they're a normal BMI, the minimum they would need really would be about 70 grams of protein. And again, I don't expect anyone to go counting protein, but if you did find this helpful, if you wanted to have a look, this guide here will just give you an idea of, how much of protein is in certain foods. So say like your chicken breast, 30 grams, your glass of milk, 9 grams, 2 eggs, 16 grams. Just to get an idea, some of these high protein yogurts may have 15 to 20 grams. So again, just if you wanted to have a quick thought of how much protein you are having. But really, I suppose, I know I looked at protein there, but we need so much more than just protein to maintain our muscle mass. We need to give our body all the nutrients it needs. So whether that's energy or it's micronutrients, and oftentimes we are guided by this food pyramid, which again, you can find on the Department of Health website. And just talking of energy, I suppose the foods that give us energy generally are carbohydrates. So our body breaks these down as a source of energy. And depending on your age range, your gender, everyone's going to need different amounts of these carbohydrates. But what we would be looking at generally, say for a population, maybe like females over the age of 50, would be 3 portions a day, men over the age of 50, 4 portions. If we look at what a portion is, it might be 2 slices of wholemeal toast or wholemeal bread, 1.5 of wholemeal soda bread, like 1 pita bread, a third of a cup of dry porridge would be a portion, 1 cup of, say, a breakfast cereal, 1 cup of cooked pasta or rice would be a serving, 2 medium potatoes would be a serving. So sometimes I find these portions are actually less than what you'd think a portion of carbohydrate would be. So you'd quite quickly get up to 3 or 4 portions in the day. And I suppose what we would be emphasizing with these carbohydrate foods is that we try and have the high fiber sources of these. So we'd go for the whole grain or wholemeal breads, pasta, rices. And again, a variety would be important here. If you're someone who is maybe mindful of not gaining more weight, or you're trying to lose weight, then it would be conscious of the amount of carbohydrate that we eat, because again, I suppose they are a high energy food. And if we are not burning off that energy, that's where we can have weight gain. But equally, if you're someone who's trying to gain weight, then looking at bringing in more carbohydrates would be a good idea. And as we were talking about there in terms of wholemeal and whole grain, we are trying to introduce more fiber into our diets, and we should all be aiming to bring more fiber into our diets. And the benefits of fiber are, you know, in terms of our heart health, in terms of blood sugars, in terms of digestive system, and then it's our best source of energy, really. And if you're looking and thinking, how could I bring more fiber into my diet? What I would say, if you're someone who has a low amount of fiber in your diet, I would gradually build up, because if you introduce too much fiber too quickly, again, you might feel that you it could affect your bowels more negatively than. So a gradual increase is what you want. But again, you might be whole grain bread, cereals, pasta, rice, high fiber cereals. So again, your porridge, your Weetabix, bran flakes. Fruit and vegetables are obviously a great source of fiber. You can bring peas, beans, lentils into your diet. And easy ways of doing that are just putting these into things like stews or casseroles, or if you're making a soup now that we're in winter months, you know, you could do it that way. And nuts and seeds are a great source. And again, whether that's we put them into our cereals or on yogurt, sprinkle over a salad, you know, lots of ways we can do it. And then dried fruits and nuts are also an option. And again, if we're trying to figure out if something is high fiber, we're looking for 6 grams of fiber in 100 grams, just if you want a little guide. And I suppose overall, what we're trying to do here is we're aiming to eat more plants in our diet. So we're trying to bring more fruit and veg in, more nuts and seeds, more legumes, so your beans and pulses and lentils, trying to bring these more into our diet to get the health benefits. And that's across the board. You know, no matter what condition you have or not have, we all should be eating more plants. And on that, I suppose, is in terms of fruit and vegetables. So fruit and vegetables are an essential part of a healthy diet. So in general, you can eat, the more you eat, the better, really. They're rich in vitamins, they're high in fiber, and they're essential for good health. And again, for someone who's maybe trying to lose weight, they are low in fat. So again, we can eat a lot more and not have high calorie intake. And the Department of Health would suggest that we should eat 5 to 7 portions a day. And again, just keep in mind that frozen vegetables are absolutely fine to have as well. And again, are equally as good as the fresh variety. So if we're looking at fruit and veg, variety is key here. So I suppose we all can be creatures of habit. So it's trying to bring in as many different fruits and veg as we can. Things to keep in mind, you know, for example, if you're trying to build up your iron level, that vitamin C is really important in terms of iron absorption. So things like oranges, strawberries, kiwis are all very high in vitamin C, so they would be a good option. And if we're looking at portions, if we're trying to get 5 to 7 portions in a day, you know, an apple and orange is 1 portion. Your things like your kiwis, your plums, you need 2 of those for a portion. 10 grapes, a bowl of salad, 1 bowl of vegetable soup, you know, 150 mils of our fruit juice. And again, I suppose you're aiming on a balanced diet to have half your plate of fruit and vegetables. Again, if you're trying to gain weight, that mightn't be what you want to do, because again, you might feel quite full. But if you're trying to lose weight, that certainly would be a good strategy to stay full but eat less calories. If you're thinking about how could I work 5 to 7 portions of fruit into my diet, if you think in the morning time, put fruit into your porridge, have a glass of orange juice with it, that's 2 portions gone. Lunchtime, have a bowl of soup and a sandwich with some salad in it, 2 portions more, so you're up to 4. And then your dinner, having 2 portions of vegetables with that, you're up to 6. And then like that, having, maybe a piece of fruit throughout the day as well, you have your 7. So it definitely is achievable to be able to do that. And Maureen and I were just discussing this before we came on here, but this image always, amazes me. If you think both of these images have the same amount of calories, but if you look at the one on the right, there's so much more food. So if you are someone who is trying to lose weight, it just shows that you never need to be hungry. You just need to introduce some fruit and vegetables. And again, you will feel fuller, but again, have a less amount of calories. So it really is, it just shows how important it is that we have fruit and veg. Other things, I suppose, in terms of a balanced diet, we want to get healthy fats in, and good ways of getting that are things like unsalted nuts and seeds. Want to use olive oil and vegetable oils, eating olives, having some avocado. Again, even like the nut butters can be a good way of getting these healthy fats in, which is good for all of our systems. And again, oily fish is a great source of healthy fats, so try to get those in twice a week if we can. And then, as we mentioned, the nuts and seeds and eggs are also contains healthy fats. I'm always conscious in this cohort as well, some of us might be using steroids, and when using steroids, they can be an increased risk of osteoporosis. So it is really important that we are looking after our bones and that we're feeding them the adequate amount of calcium and vitamin D. So in terms of vitamin D supplementation, the recommendations increased in the last couple of years. So anyone over the age of 65 should be taking 15 micrograms of vitamin D daily. Anyone less than 65 should be taking 15 micrograms of vitamin D from the months of October to March. And that's again based on where Ireland is and the lack of sunlight from the months of October to March. And there are dietary sources of vitamin D, so things like oily fish, eggs, fortified foods, but again, we can't meet our requirements through diet alone, so we do need to take supplementation, and normally daylight can help with that, but where there is no daylight from October to March or adequate amount of UV exposure, we would take 15 micrograms. And then just to keep in mind as well, in terms of calcium, that adults need 800 micrograms of calcium a day, and if you have osteoporosis, you're recommended to take 1,000 to 12,000 micrograms. So in terms of sources of calcium then, again, if we went back to our food pyramid, it features there. So calcium is found in dairy foods. And again, if we're looking at portions of dairy foods, it would be like 1 glass of milk, 1 carton of yogurt, 1 bottle of, say, a yogurt drink, or like 2 thumb sizes of cheese. And these all would give us our portions or amount of calcium that we need in the day. And so again here, if you're conscious maybe of your calorie intake, you may be aiming, to have low fat varieties of these dairy products. And again, just to remember as well, these dairy foods also are good sources of protein, of vitamin B12, riboflavin, and vitamin A. So we do also get different micronutrients from these foods. And then if we think of the food pyramid again, and we get to the top of the food pyramid, that's kind of where all the foods that are high in fat and sugar and salts. And again, these are not needed for good health. They're a balanced diet. However, as we all know, 6 in 10 Irish people eat up to 6 of these every day, and 4 in 10 people eat more than 6. So again, I suppose the issue here is they're very high in calories, but very low in nutrients. And then if we overconsume these foods, that's where then we causes weight gain, because we don't have the ability to burn off all of those calories. But again, if you're someone who's trying to gain weight, these are the foods that will be helpful for that when you're trying to eat a small amount, but get a good amount of calories in that small amount. And that, I suppose, leads me on nicely to, I suppose, malnutrition. And what I want to highlight in terms of those, because here I'm focusing on idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, but in terms of IPF, the prevalence of malnutrition is quite high, and it's estimated to be about 30%. And those with advanced IPF, that can be a decrease of your lean muscle mass of greater than 60%. So malnutrition, is a significant consideration. And again, just to reiterate from previously, BMI is not a good indicator of body composition. So even if the scale, say your BMI is 35, what about the integrity of your body? What about your muscle mass? How much weight have you lost? We're still at risk of malnutrition despite that. And I suppose malnutrition causes are multifactorial, really. So you know yourself that severe dyspnea can make coordinating eating and breathing quite difficult. People can fatigue when they're eating, and therefore you're eating less and your appetite can be reduced. We actually see some decrease in some hormones which help to promote appetite. So that might be why you're feeling your appetite is low. Then things like, chronic inflammation and metabolism. So we can get lots of infections, and that effort of breathing and that coughing, that can contribute to muscle wasting, and that's why it can be more difficult sometimes to try and regain some muscle. And again, I suppose medications can be another side effect in terms of you may have some gut symptoms, but we'll touch on that a little bit later. And there may be other issues in terms of nausea, or again, appetite might be an issue with some of these medications. And while, things like steroids, corticosteroids, may increase your appetite, it actually can decrease your muscle mass, and it can also decrease your bone mass. So that's why I suppose we were focusing on the calcium and the vitamin D earlier. And then I suppose like that mood can play quite a role in terms of appetite and ability to eat as well. So all of these factors can play into it. And I know oftentimes people will say to me, oh, well, I'm not doing as much, I'm not moving around as much, so I don't need to eat as much. But you absolutely do. And if your oxygen requirements are increasing in any way, your body is working harder and harder. So you do need to be eating more and more in those situations. So I just want to signpost, I suppose, if you feel that you have lost weight or your appetite is reduced, please do speak to your GP or your consultant, and you can get a referral to dietitian. Again, that might be a community dietitian, or it might be the dietitian in your local hospital, but I would reach out. And in the meantime, I would go onto the HSE website and just see there that these are some resources that are available there. So making the most of every bite. And one of these will kind of have some tips on, again, if you have a poor appetite, what to do, how to enrich or fortify your foods. And then the other one is actually a lovely recipe book. So there might just be some lovely nourishing recipes in there that you can make or your family members can make. And again, each mouthful will give you, more nutrition than maybe other standard recipes would. Just for anyone out there that maybe is suffering with a reduced appetite, what we oftentimes say to people is aim for 3 small meals and 2 to 3 snacks. So there's nothing more off-putting than a really piled over full plate. So go for the smaller portions and more often can really help when you are trying to eat more and you have no mind for food. I would always use full fat products. So again, your volume of food mightn't be as large. So you want to make sure that you're getting enough calories in that smaller amount. So full fat products where you can. And again, make the most of the part of the day where you're at your hungriest. So sometimes people feel they can't eat in the morning. Other times people feel like that's their best time of the day. So make the most of that time of the day. And what I would say is, you will be suffering with fatigue and you will need some help. So whether you batch cook yourself or you get family members to help out and do a bit of batch cooking, or consider a meal delivery service, or again, online shopping, or ready meals, anything that makes eating that bit easier, because you don't want to go and put all this energy into preparing a meal and then you can't face eating it. So try and make, the whole meals and food as easy as possible for yourself so that you have the energy to eat it. Okay, I'm going to move on then to, in terms of if you're someone who you are trying to lose weight, the first thing I would say to you is do not sacrifice protein in your diet for weight reduction. I've come across this quite a bit over the years, that someone has been told maybe to lose weight and they have dramatically cut so many things from their diet. And oftentimes protein sources can be one of those. So what I really stress to you, anyone with pulmonary fibrosis needs to be taking enough protein to feed the muscles to not lose their muscle mass. So whatever you're doing, if you are making changes to your diet, please do make sure that you're taking enough protein to feed your muscles. So some resources, again, that you might find helpful if you are trying to lose weight. Obviously, we have the ILFA weight management. There are some lovely HSE ones also. The one on the left from Mullingar Hospital, A Guide to Managing Your Weight, is really good. There's a new HSE booklet as well about talking about weight. And again, a kind of guide to developing healthy habits. And then there's the food pyramid booklet, which I kind of discussed today quite a bit. It can be great in terms of a guide and portion sizes and all of that. The INDI, which is the Irish Nutrition and Dietetic Institute, on the website there you will find some more fact sheets or some helpful advice. Also, the HSE have some advice there in terms of weight management. Other areas, say food, actually have a program as well that you can follow, so that might be useful. And just to look in a bit more detail at some of the resources there for example, the Mullingar Hospital one, it'll go through kind of meal plannings and planning ahead, not eating on the go, because I suppose that's where we can make the wrong choices. And again, a good thing in terms about keeping track and how to set goals and to give you meal plan suggestions, so it's quite practical, so that might be useful for someone. And then I actually only came across this recently, but again, this is a newer booklet by the HSE as well, and it will also kind of look at different things about exploring your habits, setting goals, and also has some nutrition advice in there as well. But I suppose what oftentimes I would be telling people in terms of if you are trying to lose weight, again, I would say set a goal. You have to have something to aim for. Plan your meals and your shopping for the week. Again, it's when we eat when we're hungry or on the go, we're making, poor choices. Batch cooking and freezing healthy meals is great. There's nothing worse when you get home and there's nothing ready to eat and you're starving. That's when you go to the cupboard. Whereas if you can just pull out something out of the freezer and have a healthy meal, that would be great. Regular meal pattern is important, so not skipping meals, and only snack if you're hungry and not out of habit. If you're used to your tea at 10 o'clock and that's when you always have your scone or something, again, ask yourself, am I hungry? And maybe if you are, then choosing a healthier snack. And again, avoiding eating late at night, and I suppose, or late in the evening. And again, I suppose the idea there is that we don't get the opportunity to burn off those calories, so that's maybe where we want to avoid eating in that evening time. And we're kind of then encouraging maybe potentially a 7-hour fast, so we're not constantly feeding the body. Using smaller plates, we really do eat with our eyes. So if you're seeing a full plate, but it's actually on a smaller plate, we feel like we're eating more than if you're using a big plate and putting smaller portions on it. You feel like you're depriving yourself. And again, I suppose it's, don't give up if you have a bad day. These things happen. None of us are perfect, but it's the next day to go back again. And I suppose that goes for whether you're trying to gain weight or lose weight. You will have bad days, but the next day you just try to get back to your plan again. And I oftentimes find this diagram quite helpful. So when you're trying to make any change in your diet, or actually any change in your life at all, these are just some really good questions to ask yourself before you sit down to make that change. And the first thing I would say is, why do I want to make this change? And that's, you have to spend a little bit of time sitting on that and thinking about that. Is it because you were told to do something, or you want to do it yourself? So have a think about, why do I want to make this change? Why is this important to me? We have to go into these changes motivated, because change isn't easy no matter what it is. So you have to know why you want to do it. And then I suppose thinking about, how am I going to make it happen? So a lot of planning needs to go in before we make these changes. So if we take, for example, someone who's trying to gain weight, okay, you're sitting down, you're looking, at your current food pattern or meal pattern, you're thinking, where can I bring in more calories? So then you have to think, how am I going to do it? And then what needs to be in place? So for example, I need to order some ready meals. I need to do some batch cooking. I need to buy some higher protein yogurts. I need to start changing and using full fat products, so that practical side of it as well. And then what supports do I need? So for example, if you're struggling to make meals, who can I ask to help with that? Again, what might get in the way? How will I get around that? Again, there's barriers to every change that we want to bring in. So again, there will be days where I don't feel like eating, where my appetite is really poor. How am I going to get around that? That might be the day where, if you've been prescribed nutrition drinks by your pharmacist or by your dietitian or your GP, I may need to take more nutrition drinks on the days where I can't eat my meals. So again, thinking, what's going to stop you and how are you going to get around that? And how would I monitor my progress? So again, what's your goal? Again, is it going to be weight increase? Is it going to be feeling stronger, able to walk that little bit further, able to do a few more of those sit to stands, whatever it is? Again, you need to have set your goal so that you can to monitor yourself. And then how will I feel when I've made this change? And I think this is really powerful. If you think about, you know, how will I feel when you know, I have gained, you know, 2 kilos, I'll feel stronger, I'll feel happier, you know, whatever it is, you know, whatever the change is that you want to do, you know, whether it's increasing exercise, you know, I'll feel fitter, you know, my breathing may be impacted, you know, all of those. You just really trying to visualize how you will feel when you have met your goal. And then when am I going to start? And that is really important, because you can have all these thoughts and all these plans, but when am I actually going to start is really important as well. So, you know, that's just something I would find helpful. So again, might be something you go back on when you are trying to look at any changes you're trying to make and go through those questions. Okay, moving on to strategies to manage the impact of pulmonary fibrosis on your diet. Okay, shortness of breath is obviously something we come across quite a lot. So what I often would say to people, when we're feeling very full, if we've had a very large meal, people can feel quite uncomfortable. They can feel quite short of breath. They can feel that they cough a lot more after a larger meal. So sometimes it might be smaller, more frequent meals rather than 3 large meals. Again, it might be that you're choosing softer foods, that you're finding the foods that you have to chew a lot or crumbly are making you cough more. So again, maybe go for the softer options. Sip some water, you know, while you are eating. Make sure you're sitting upright when you're eating, and then, you know, take time, you know, eat, chew, take your time when you're eating. Don't feel under pressure that you have to make conversation throughout your whole meal as well. Sometimes it can be enough just coordinating breathing and eating, and then if you're trying to talk as well, you know, so prioritize yourself and your meal times. Fatigue, I suppose, is another significant issue, and that's what I would say is rest before your meal so that you have energy, and make the most of the good part of the day, like we were saying earlier. Have meals in the freezer, like make your life easier. Batch cook, buy ready meals, get family and friends to help out. You know, if again you want a meal delivery service, there's many of those now available. And then again, things like online shopping, if you feel like you don't want to go down to the grocery shop, or, you know, again, that you can just have all of the larger grocery stores now do an online service, which is great. And then dry mouth, I suppose, can be experienced by quite a lot of people as well. And depending on your mode of oxygen, it may differ. But again, choosing moist, softer foods is good. Sucking on frozen liquids or sweets or chewing gum can help. Obviously, you could consider artificial saliva or mouthwashes. And with the mouthwashes, we would just say don't get alcohol-based mouthwashes, because again, they're quite drying. And take regular sips of cold water. And again, just limiting your caffeine intake, because again, caffeine is a diuretic, so it makes us pee more. So again, that could actually dehydrate us and cause dry mouth even more so. And then I suppose just in terms of the side effects of some of the medications, and you know, you may have all experienced, some of you may have experienced these, and when we start on some of these antifibrotic drugs, you know, they can be started at lower doses and they're increased up then because of the side effects. So things like that, some people do experience nausea. Obviously, if it's quite extreme, then we can do like antiemetics or prokinetics, different medications to try and help to manage that. But it might be as well that you may be choosing, you know, bland or cold foods. Sometimes hot food and the odor that can come from that can be quite off-putting, so you may choose colder foods. Again, greasy or spicy foods, you know, the high-fat foods sit in our stomachs a bit longer, so it doesn't help in terms of nausea. Again, ginger can be helpful, so whether that's, you know, ginger tea or ginger biscuits, you know, you might find that that helps in terms of the nausea. No appetite, and again, this can happen, and as we looked at earlier, it's multifactorial. You know, it may be medication related, but it also could be related to so many other things. You know, appetite stimulants are something that we use not regularly, but it is an option. And then, but I suppose what I would say mostly to someone with no appetite, that where possible, meals and food just needs to become a routine. And it's not that we want to make food like medicine, but sometimes it can feel like that, where you are focusing then on just making sure that you have your breakfast, lunch, dinner, your snacks, and it's just a routine. At 8 o'clock, I have my breakfast, whether you want it or not, you know, without making yourself sick. You just have a good routine and you're eating little and often. And again, like previously we were saying, you're using your high calorie foods so that you don't need to eat a large volume, but you're still going to get a good amount of calories. And diarrhea can be a thing that, again, that a lot of people experience, and they may give you some anti-diarrheal medications, but also just in terms of food, things that you might want to avoid would be, you know, high fiber foods, spicy foods, greasy foods. Sweeteners have can have a laxative effect. Again, too much caffeine can have a laxative effect. Citrus foods maybe, and things that you could bring into your diet if you softening with diarrhea would be, bananas, oats or oatmeal, because again, they can add bulk and can help in terms of adding more bulk to your bowel motions. And again, I suppose more easily digested foods. But again, if it is medication related, speak to your consultant or your nurse. And again, they can, look at your dosing and maybe prescribe you some medication that might help with the side effect of the other medication. In terms of reflux, I suppose there is a high prevalence of acid reflux in pulmonary fibrosis, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, IPF, and it's actually significantly higher than say non-IPF ILD or COPD. But interestingly, 50 to 70% are asymptomatic, so you mightn't even know that you have reflux. So a lot of you may be on anti-acid medications already, and you'd be thinking, oh, I don't have any symptoms, why am I on this? But unknown to yourself, you actually may have reflux. So it is quite important that we do put people on anti-acid medication. In terms of diet, I suppose, interestingly, it can be quite mixed in terms of the evidence behind certain foods causing reflux, but what is the strongest evidence is the amount of time you leave between dinner and going to bed. So again, if you're lying flat or when you're going to bed, that's when you may be refluxing. So you want to allow enough time for your stomach to empty so that there aren't foods there that could be exacerbating reflux. And then potential foods, and everyone is individual. You'll all know yourself if you do suffer reflux, what foods triggers it, but it could maybe things like carbonated drinks, citrus fruit or drinks, so chocolate, spicy foods, high fat foods, caffeine, alcohol. But again, it's important for you to identify your own triggers because everyone is different. Okay, and just finally, I suppose coming towards the end, just key take-home messages, I suppose, for me. One would be body composition, and just remembering that it's not about BMI, it's about your muscle mass, and again, that malnutrition is not limited to someone who is very underweight. Someone who can have an obese BMI can also be malnourished. So adequate energy, protein, and exercise is important to maintain muscle mass. So you need all of those elements to maintain and to build muscle mass. And if you are trying to lose weight, please, please, please do not sacrifice protein. So make sure you're still getting enough protein foods in. And again, if you are worried about loss of weight or loss of appetite, please speak to your nurse or your GP or your consultant and ask for a referral to a dietitian. And again, just about making changes to your diet and your lifestyle. It'll take time to ensure you allow yourself time to think about and to plan how you're going to implement these changes. So go back, look at that slide and work your way through it so that you do have success, whatever that change might be that works for everyone. These are some helpful websites and resources that you might find useful. And finally, just want to say thank you all very much for listening to me. And if you have any questions, Maureen will be able to see them there now and we can work our way through them. I hope you found today useful.
Gosh, that was incredibly informative, Sandra. Thank you so much for that. Now, if you want to, yep, very good. Stop sharing your screen. We don't have any questions that have come in just yet. However, while we wait for them to come in, so what you need to do if you want to submit a question is you just pop it into the chat window there or into the Q&A box. Either way, we'll be able to see your questions. But while we're waiting for questions to come in, just a couple quick things. I absolutely love the idea of small changes, and you're kind of, it's not like you need to just completely reinvent yourself in a day, but it's really kind of maybe something that's gradually adopted over time. One of the things that I've been doing myself is ground flaxseed. I put a little tablespoon of ground flaxseed on my porridge in the morning. So just as an example of kind of small changes that you can make. Do you have any other sorts of thoughts around, maybe like you talked also about changing to high protein yogurt from regular yogurt, other sorts of small changes that folks could make at the start?
Yeah, and that's it. Sometimes it's not this big overhaul of your diet. And I suppose this is what I was talking about earlier as well. Oftentimes we're thinking of all these things we need to take out of our diet, but it might be more what we need to bring in. So it might be something simple like adding lentils to your soup when you're making them, and then you've added in protein, you've added in soluble fiber, there you've made significant change. And if it's something that you can sustain then, rather than aiming for the 7 portions of fruit a day and you're actually never going to get there and you're just disappointing yourself. Sometimes it's better just to focus on smaller things like you did. So like that, adding in the flaxseed. So if you're someone at the moment who eats 1 piece of fruit a day, then maybe you're trying to build that up to 2 or 3. And again, it's making that accessible and easy. And yeah, so it is about the small changes.
That's great, thanks. And then the other thing I was just wondering if you have an opinion on, because I am assuming that no one in this webinar today, including myself, is a gourmet chef that's able to, just whip up meals for themselves, no problem whatsoever. The temptation is to, and you had mentioned, maybe a meal service or something like that. The problem with a lot of processed food is the amount of sodium in them, though, right? Have you got an opinion on sodium and processed food?
Yeah, and I suppose that is something, if you do have high blood pressure or any fluid retention issues, that will be the issue. I suppose there are probably, I think, more ready meal services out there now where are more focused on healthier food options, or it might be some of them will just deliver you the ingredients and you make the meal yourself then, and there are kind of more healthy options. But I suppose if you're someone who's losing quite a lot of weight, you've got to prioritize what's important to you. And if it is avoiding loss of muscle mass and losing more weight and becoming more frail, then the salt in those ready meals, won't be an issue, because really your focus is on, building yourself up. So I suppose it's just going to be your priorities. But that's where I think batch cooking can be good. So on a good day, make up like, a big shepherd's pie. You can control everything that goes into it and then portion it and freeze it. And then exactly what went into it. Or again, ask a family member, a neighbor, someone. So, it doesn't have to be ready meals. It might be someone that could cook for you. And again, it doesn't need to be anything too gourmet. It's just getting, your carbohydrates, your protein and your vegetables in there.